Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we are diving into something that has shaped, well, pretty much everything in our world. But here's the twist. Modern science says it doesn't even exist. We're talking about biological race. We're going to trace the history of how this incredibly powerful idea was built by science, and then how science itself took it all apart. I mean, just look around. The world is full of this incredible variety of human faces, skin tones, and features. It's stunning. And for centuries, people have been trying to make sense of all this diversity. So let's jump in and see how early science tried to create this neat, orderly system to explain it all. All right, here's our game plan. First, we'll look at the old scientific model they used to sort people into different groups. Then, we'll see how modern genetics came along and completely blew that idea out of the water. And finally, we'll unpack the very real, lasting impact of these ideas. So how in the world did scientists even start trying to categorize all of humanity? Well, they developed what they truly believed was an objective, data-driven system that was all based on physical measurement. The whole thing was built on this one core idea, the typological model. And the thinking was pretty simple, really. The idea was, if we can just define a few perfect, ideal types, then we can classify every single person based on how closely they match one of those types. This entire model depended on the assumption that human groups were these separate, distinct, and unchanging categories. Now, to make all of this feel scientific, they needed data. And one of their most important tools was something called the cephalic index. It's just a simple ratio, your head's width divided by its length, but they believed this one little number could reveal something really fundamental about who you were and where you came from. And check this out. This table shows you exactly how it worked. Based on that score, you got slotted into a neat little category: dolichocephalic, mesocephalic, or brachycephalic. Now, for the anthropologists back then, these weren't just descriptions like long-headed. No, they saw these as rock-solid scientific classifications. Oh, but they didn't stop with the head. The nasal index was another one of their go-to measurements. It basically did for your nose what the cephalic index did for your skull. And again, the whole point was to take a complex human feature and boil it down to a single, simple number that they could sort. And yep, you guessed it. Just like with head shape, your nose got sorted into a tidy category. So with tools like these, scientists really felt like they were building this rigorous, objective system. So what kind of world did this whole framework create? So where did all this measuring and sorting actually lead? What kind of picture of the world did it paint? Well, it led directly to the now infamous idea of classifying all of humanity into a few major races. Okay, now this is where it all comes together. You can see how those measurements we just talked about were used to build these profiles. So for instance, a narrow nose, what they called leptorrhine, was considered a classic Caucasoid trait. A broad or platyrrhine nose got assigned to the Negroid type. Every single observable trait was just neatly sorted into these incredibly rigid boxes. And believe me, it didn't stop with just 3 big groups. This system got unbelievably elaborate. It branched out into dozens and dozens of subtypes. You could be classified as, say, an alpine Caucasoid or an Arctic Mongoloid. All of this complexity gave the whole system this aura of deep scientific authority. For decades, this stuff was taught as cold, hard fact. But then, a revolution in science started to happen, and it began to reveal the massive flaws in this entire way of thinking. You know, the first real cracks in this so-called scientific consensus actually appeared way earlier. There was this anthropologist, Ashley Montagu, who was a really prominent voice arguing against it all. He famously declared back in 1942 that race is a myth. He was adamant that it was a dangerous social idea with zero basis in reality. But the final undeniable nail in the coffin came from genetics. And what scientists found was absolutely stunning. Genetic analysis revealed that there is more genetic diversity within any single so-called racial group than there is between them. Just let that sink in for a second. That means 2 people from, say, Nigeria could be more genetically different from each other than one of them is from someone in Norway. With that one discovery, the entire system built on looking at people just completely fell apart. This new genetic truth quickly became the global scientific consensus. In the 1950s, UNESCO actually brought scientists together from all over the world. They issued these landmark statements, officially declaring that biological races were a myth and confirming that, yep, we are all one species. So what replaced that old, busted model? Something called the Klinel model. It's a much more accurate way of seeing things. It basically explains that traits like skin color don't have sharp boundaries. Instead, they change gradually over geographic space, kind of like a gradient on a map. There's no point you can find where one race suddenly ends and another one begins. Okay, so if biological race is a myth, why on earth does it still matter so much? Because even a myth, even a scientific mistake, can have incredibly powerful, real-world consequences. And this brings us to a really critical distinction we have to make: the difference between race and ethnicity. While that biological idea of race was based on totally flawed physical traits, ethnicity describes something very real: our shared culture, our language, our heritage. It's about where our families come from and the traditions we share. It has nothing to do with our biology. And the toxic legacy of this biological race myth? It's racism. That's the ideology that takes these fake biological boxes and uses them to create a hierarchy of human value, to try and justify prejudice and discrimination. And this is exactly why we talk about systemic inequality. That social idea of race became deeply woven into our laws, our housing policies, our institutions. And even after the explicitly racist language is removed, the effects of those historical systems can linger for generations. So, we've gone on quite a journey here, haven't we? From a world of neat, simple biological boxes to a much more complex and way more accurate understanding of who we are. So let's just quickly recap the big points. The old concept of race was, fundamentally, a scientific error based on looking at surface-level traits. Genetics proves we are one big human family with gradual clinal variation. And yet, and this is the crucial part, the idea of race became a powerful social reality that continues to shape our world through racism and systemic inequality. And that leaves us with a big question, doesn't it? If race isn't in our genes, why is it still so incredibly powerful in our world? We've seen how the biological myth was torn down, but the social reality it created is still very much with us. And understanding that difference is absolutely key to navigating the world we live in today. Thanks for joining me.